Welcome to the road to Acapulco. There's a new idea in town, an idea that's been heralded by Bob Podolsky for 32 years. It's an idea that will change the world, and it's beginning to take shape in Acapulco.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the road to Acapulco. This is Michael Nimetz and the great Bob Podolsky with us. And today we're going to talk about the process of getting to an Octologue. It involves quite a few things. This is something that I guess I've been involved in developing. And so we're just going to go through that, each of the steps, and discuss each of the steps and why they might be important. So,
and by the way, this is podcast number 20.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, you know, I guess the story begins when when I first got introduced to the Octologue, and subsequently met Bob, went through the whole process of talking to him about it. I like this idea of the Octologue, but what, 6 has it been? How long has it been? About 9 months ago you came down here?
8.
All right, so 8 months ago. And maybe a little bit before that, we actually started an Octologue here in Acapulco. And, it's been a interesting and informative process. But like anything, when you do something, this is really where you get to learn stuff. And from my point of view, I felt like there was something missing. And so after Acapulco 2017, certainly one of the things we discovered was, and not that Bob didn't discover it, but I did, and that was that soul bonding was such an important part of really getting into an Octologue. Something that I hadn't really considered prior to going to the workshop. And certainly something that you didn't really consider because soul bonding wasn't part of Flourish.
For me, it was like the water is to a fish. It's part of my experience, and I wanted to bring it to the Octologue sooner and didn't really have the opportunity. But I knew eventually it had to be an important piece, and I was delighted when you discovered that.
So, after Acapulco, Bob took off on writing a book about soul bonding, which is about to be published here pretty soon. And I kind of took on a role of, I wanted to write a kind of a manual, a short manual on how to do an Octologue. And so as I went through the process of writing, and then kind of, having discussions and then also looking into more information, I started to really have some doubts about the process that we had gone through. And, continued to look for more information. And probably just within the past month or so, I really had some breakthroughs on some things. And in really having a discussion with some other people, I thought that journaling is something that could be very effective in getting people to really kind of identify what they're about, what their purpose is about, what their objectives and goals and understanding.
Let me interject something about that,
Sure.
Because the thing that I notice about journaling is it turns an individual's attention inward. And we're used to thinking about stuff external to ourselves, things going on in the environment, events in our day-to-day lives. When you sit down and start journaling, you're turning the attention inward, and that opens up doors for us.
Yeah. And so I looked at that as this is something that I think is useful to start people on the process of heading towards an octologue, because without kind of identifying what are my main features, what are my main goals, and that type of thing, trying to put someone in an octologue is going to be difficult, because they're really not going to understand, really how to do it. Another thing is that by journaling, you can essentially set up a start point. And so as you learn more stuff, or as you change your opinions about things, or as you learn more stuff about yourself, journaling allows you to do that. And so I thought journaling was a great idea. So I put together a kind of a class here in Acapulco with the idea of inviting other people to start this process and just kind of get their opinion on where they were at in regard to this, and if they thought it was a good idea. But it just so happened that just the week prior to that, somebody gave me a video that was on something called Cutting Out the Small Talk. And in this 20-minute TED Talk was a lady that essentially was advocating for something that she called big talk. So it really kind of wrapped everything up for me in regards to, the way that she really got going on this idea was that she was journaling. And so it looked to me like, this is actually like the subsequent step is, first the journaling and then second the big talk. Essentially kind of communicating with yourself, understanding yourself, and then being able to communicate with other people in a meaningful way. And so, I incorporated that into the class, and we had the class, and the class went really well. Bob, do you have any comments on that?
I thought it went really well, and for me, it was a missing piece of the puzzle that between the journaling and the big talk. Maybe a little more should be said about big talk, because while the name is sort of expressive of what it is, we haven't actually defined what is big talk. Well, big talk is what you're doing when you're not making small talk. If you're having a conversation about things that matter, you're not going to be talking about your local team or the sports on the television or the politics. You're going to talk about what really matters. And when you learn to do that, and that learning can easily come out of the journaling. So I really see the link between the journaling and the big talk, and it takes a certain willingness to go beyond the social norm. We have a kind of social contract that most people adhere to most of the time, and to put it bluntly, the social contract is that when we talk socially, we're usually full of shit. We're usually talking nonsense. We're talking things that are trivial and unimportant, like who won the game.
Well, even, hello, how are you? Just a traditional response. Mm-hmm. I'm fine, or I'm good, or I'm having a great day.
Yeah, imagine asking someone, how are you? And they respond with something real, like, gee, I'm having a terrible time. I'm really suffering here. I'm struggling with some old business that I've never gotten over from my childhood.
Yeah.
You don't often hear that, but if the truth were known, it would often be like that.
Yeah. And just to give a little bit more on big talk, her initial question was, what do you want to do before you die? And then the second question was, if you were going to die tomorrow, what would you do today? So that is kind of a meaningful question that kind of cuts through most people's BS screen and goes right to the heart of the subject and right to the heart of their feelings. Needless to say, in the video, it kind of displays this ability to kind of really connect with people. And I kind of looked at it as like almost a second language. Like there's a second language that we could be using that we really haven't.
Right.
And so the way that it was conveyed in the video, the popularity of this idea It grew rather rapidly. To me, said a lot of things that were useful. So with those two, essentially you kind of have a much better understanding of yourself and how to talk to other people. But then there's the next step, and that is the soul bonding step. And again, this is just really happening all in the past month that we've really initiated here locally a soul bonding class and a group of people that are studying soul bonding on a regular basis. And so the effects of this knowledge and information is really starting to permeate those that have had that experience. Mm-hmm. And what it is doing, and I'll speak for myself, is enlightening me to a great deal more about myself and my capabilities than I ever knew I had. And I thought of myself pretty highly. But honestly, this is really some important stuff that I think most people really don't even know that they're missing. And unfortunately, I'll put it like this in regard to most people are very familiar with the idea of the enemy within, that kind of self-doubt, self-talk, kind of negative approach that most people hear in their own minds when they're trying to do something that's a little bit outside of their comfort zone. And so when you come up against your comfort zone, this enemy within comes out. And what most people don't understand is that that's really kind of a function of your subconscious that's been programmed from your early childhood. And a lot of those paradigms that were probably installed with the protection of the person in mind, but the reality is that those were false beliefs.
Actually, they are true and useful when you are in that situation of being an infant or a toddler and you're trying to survive an environment that's a little hostile. Mm-hmm. Which is not to say that your parents set out to be hostile. It's that most parents are ignorant about what is good parenting. They make mistakes and the kids pay the price. And the price is we wind up defending against things that we'd be better off not having to defend against. And as we grow up, we keep doing that even though it no longer applies.
Right.
We're using obsolete means to cope with stresses that no longer exist externally, but we recreate them internally.
Yeah. And so a lot of people go through the rest of their lives believing certain things about themselves that they can or can't do.
Mm-hmm. Limiting beliefs.
When the reality is that these things are essentially easily fixed once you become aware of what the circumstances is. But these forms of character structure are essentially things that sometimes can be easily identified, sometimes can be identified in even your outside appearance. But nevertheless, it's something that people need to know before they can do anything about. Mm-hmm. And what that does for someone like myself is, like in the case of my subconscious, I have been able to connect with my subconscious, and instead of that subconscious remaining the enemy within, I'm currently in the process of switching the enemy within into my best friend that works with me on whatever I choose to allocate that to. But it's like a partnership, and as I get better at doing that, it's getting better for me. I'm able to do more things.
So what can you tell the listeners about some of the kinds of things that you can grow into that way that you didn't realize previously?
Well, I always say the sky is the limit. When it comes to examples of people that have done that have used their subconscious to do great things. The one that comes to mind right off the bat is Wim Hof with his ability to essentially change his core body temperature, even in freezing situations. He can bury himself in ice for 90 minutes, which would put most people in the hospital in a matter of a few minutes, and essentially maintain his core body temperature, and after 90 minutes walk out just like he came off the beach or something like that. He's also able to alter his immune system so that he can be injected with a disease of some sort that everybody else reacts to, but he doesn't. His immune system is that capable that he can do that, and he's also been able to prove that in a laboratory setting with 10 other people that he trained against 10 people that were control, and in every case, it worked. So this is certainly this is just one example, but there's many different, I guess what people might call superhuman characteristics, whether it be, the ability to speed read or the ability to do math in your head, all kinds of different
photographic memory is a possibility. The thing that when you're contemplating these superpowers, so to speak, that's exciting and that's really cool, and I've used some of those things, but probably the most important benefit is one becomes capable of relating to another person with real intimacy, where you lower all your defenses, you lower your guard, you stop defending completely, and you're just there emotionally naked, so to speak, with another person who is doing the same thing with you. This is what leads to the phenomenon we call Syzygy, the deep, deep sharing. And while it's really cool to have superpowers, for most people, it's this relationship element that is going to be the most powerful.
Right, and that's really the next step from soul bonding is the Octologue. And that's, once you really get to know who you are and what you're capable of, then teaming up with other people that have that capability and learning to trust them at a much more intimate level is going to essentially guarantee success in whatever endeavor because of those abilities that very few other people have. And so you can imagine, very capable people working as a team in just about any business enterprise is going to be a great deal more successful than what they see as an example of that business now.
In my experience, when you look at the relationships between most of the people who work together, in other words, go into an average office and look at the relationships among office personnel, those relationships generally suck. They're really bad, most of them. Not all. There are exceptions, but most of them are terrible, and they don't have to be. And we've got the cure for that.
Yeah, so with these 4 steps, and essentially this is kind of I guess would be the basic introduction to how this all works together. With all those in mind, then essentially a person, once they grasp the concepts of that, can delve deeper into the various areas. I consider, what we've just talked about is kind of the introduction to soul bonding and the introduction to the Octologue, with the idea that there's going to be a additional course or understanding or education in regard to just your standard Octologue, and then beyond that is a advanced course in advanced Octologue, as well as the same thing with soul bonding.
Quite right.
That's essentially the presentation that I wanted to put out. I did want to say that this, now that we have a method, we're going to, work with it make sure that it works effectively. Maybe throw some adjustments in there. The little detailed pieces that need to be put together.
Tweaking.
What are the little lesson plans for each and every day or hour? All that, of course, is something that we've still got in the future. But as far as I'm concerned, in the past week, we've actually nailed it to a day. July 13th, 2017 was the day that I really realized that this is going to make it. It's going to be the difference. And essentially, like a group of mad scientists that come out of a laboratory and say, "Eureka! We found it! This is the answer!"
Right.
That's kind of the feeling that I have about the circumstances we're looking, into the future about.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that what we're contemplating doing is creating the first real civilization on the planet.
Yeah.
Because we're doing something that is that profoundly beyond what's been done before. And I am incredibly excited about what we're doing, and I want to invite everyone out there who's listening to keep tuning in and get more and more information. This is the next big thing. This is going to be bigger than Google or anything else out there today.
Yeah, it's certainly a technology and a knowledge that once a person grasps it, they can change everything. They can change their family, they can change their business, they can change any organization that they're associated with or any of the people that they're associated with, and essentially have a method to start that path or start them on a path.
A map. We've got a map.
Understanding.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really an amazing time. I'm really excited about the future. I kind of consider it myself as I'm finally free. I understand what needs to be done. And from here on out, it's just I'm doing what I want to do. And, it's making a positive change in the world and in people. And this is another beautiful thing about the Octologue and this whole idea is it's not necessarily about money or a situation. You could have people that are living on a desert island that don't have much.
Mm-hmm.
They can utilize this process just as well as someone in New York City.
Oh, yes. This is one of those things where one could create a storyline where you have a group of people stranded in the middle of nowhere, and somebody among them says, well, gee, let's see, how are we going to organize? I think we should pick one of us to be the brutal tyrant and the rest of us obey him.
Yeah.
And someone else says, well, maybe there's a better way. And here we are. This is the better way. This is how humans ought to have been brought up to function. And if it weren't for the psychopaths, I think that humanity would have stumbled onto something like this a long time ago.
It probably did. And
it may have.
Probably didn't work out.
Yeah, there are too many psychopaths around. I know of at least one ancient society that used some similar methodologies that was basically destroyed by its envious neighbors. That happens, you got envious neighbors and they're not in on how to do what you've done. They'll come and try to take it away from you and mess you up in the process. We need to spread this worldwide so there aren't envious neighbors. Everybody knows how.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the beauty of the situation that we live in today with the internet is we have the ability to put this information out to everybody that wants to know about it instantaneously. And although we don't have a great deal of listeners at the moment, I certainly consider this, if nothing else, a chance to talk to those people in the future that listen to us.
Oh, yes.
And say, here's where we were at, and, that's where we're going.
Right.
So I guess with that, we're going to wrap it up quick.
Okay.
This is a short version.
Well, we'll see you all on the road to Acapulco next time. Bye now.
All right. Bye-bye.